Was socialism ever good for the Jews? I'm a Jew. I want to know. Was socialism ever good for the Jews? That is an essential question for me. I know for sure, as you do, that communism was not good for the Jews. In fact, many thousands, tens of thousands of Jews, millions of Jews have suffered under communism. Lenin himself wrote, the goal of socialism is communism. And in fact, they are essentially one in the same. So we are going to explore from communism to National Socialism, because indeed the Nazi Party is the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. That's what the Nazi Party is, National Socialism. And communism, socialism, National Socialism pervades from nation to nation. At its essence, socialism is anti-capitalism. Now, why is that anti-Semitism? Because Jews are largely capitalists, very, very, very largely. We're entrepreneurs. We own small businesses. We even own small businesses in the times of the shtetl, peddlers who would go from town to town. Were capitalists. They weren't socialists, they were capitalists. Anti-capitalism leads to anti-Semitism because Jews are, for the most part, capitalists, and they are identified strongly amongst the anti-Semitic populations of the world as capitalists. Anti-Semites see Jews as capitalists. In an article from Israel HaYom, written by Chris Robbins and published on May 17, 2019, there is a very thorough review of socialism in terms of, has socialism been good for the Jews? Since 1918, the article reads, socialism has been tried in 64 countries. 64 countries have tried out socialism. With well over a century of experience, evidence, and history, it is time to ask, says the article, has any one of these experiments been good for the Jewish people? And again, 64 countries. We see a book here that kind of illustrates the problem of socialism and anti-Semitism. Jews are portrayed as undesirable people. Socialism is enjoying a resurgence in the United States. And according to the most recent Gallup poll, this was written in 2019, 57% of Democrats now view socialism favorably. What does that mean for the Jews? Since 1918, socialism has been tried in 64 countries. So we have collected a lot of evidence The article traces us all the way back to 1918, when the Russian Tsar Nicholas II and his family were all murdered. The captors, who were the Bolsheviks, lined the family up, the royal family, with 5 servants against a wall, and executed them all. The death sentence was read aloud. The Tsar accepted the verdict with composure. There were 12 weapons present, and the captors killed the royal family, their family doctor, their servants, and even the family dog. Here's the question: have we benefited? Let's take a data-driven approach to the question of Jewish fate inside of the 64 socialist experimental countries. We say that in Czechoslovakia, the documents provided by the secret police in Czechoslovakia provide the deepest insights into the practice of drawing up lists of Jews. Lists of Jews. What could a socialist government ever do with lists of Jews? All we have to do is go to the National Socialists and what they did with lists of Jews, which feed them into computer programs. Yes, there definitely were computers that facilitated to an extraordinary extent the Holocaust under the National Socialist German Workers' Party. The Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was the first large-scale experiment with socialism. And the article says Jewish founding members were not well treated in the USSR, Jewish founding members of socialism and communism. Once established, rabbis were arrested. Jewish property was seized, and entire Jewish neighborhoods were dissolved. Furthermore, the teaching of Hebrew and the observance of Shabbat was against the law. Practicing Jews were removed from their jobs and often imprisoned. If you know Soviet Jews, former Soviet Jews, you know every bit of this is true, and more, and more. They hate socialism. They hate communism, which are essentially one and the same. Even non-practicing Jews faced scorn, public ridicule, and intense discrimination in higher education and in the workforce. From 1918 until 1989, over 1 million Soviet Jews were forced, and I emphasize the word forced, to abandon their Judaism. through forcible conversions of Jewish families from Judaism to Marxism, which was an even greater loss to the Jewish people than the forcible conversions of Jews to Catholicism during the Spanish Inquisition. We lost over 1 million Soviet Jews in forced conversions. The Jews vanished, not in gas chambers, but when their ancient intellectual inheritance was outlawed, the synagogues were closed, destroyed, or repurposed, and their rabbis were sent for re-education. One of the marks of Marxism or socialism is what is known as re-education, meaning that your Jewish laws, values, traditions are re-educated into Marxist values. Socialist states have what could be called a quasi-religion, the worship of the state itself, which is, of course, what happened in Nazi Germany. National Socialist Workers' Party. It tolerates no competition. The Soviets' treatment of Jews was consistent with their treatment of the newly formed Jewish state. They sent weapons in support of Jewish-hating Arab dictators, leading to the slaughter of thousands of Jews. The article reminds us we should forever remember the Soviet-made anti-tank missiles and Soviet-trained Egyptian operators killing Israeli tank crews during the Yom Kippur War. The fate of the Jews in every European socialist country had a particular path, identifiers. Ostracism, we were ostracized. We were persecuted. They declared us, in terms of our ability to function as normal human beings, illegal. They discriminated against us in the workplace, and they forcibly converted us to Marxism. If you did not convert to Marxism, you could end up in a state of persecution and or imprisonment, including your family and your extended family. Between 1959 and 1989, 30 years, there were major declines, precipitous declines in the Jewish population in Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, and the Ukraine. The majority of the declines being due to subjugation, the outlawing of Judaism, forcible conversion, and no choice assimilation. This is socialism. This is National Socialism. So, all over the world, there are Jews and non-Jews who are saying no to socialism. In Romania, the fledgling Israeli government and Jewish philanthropists had to bribe, and wait till you hear these bribes, the socialist leaders to free our people so that we could leave the country of Romania. They bribed them with military hardware, oil drilling, and pipeline equipment, technology, transfers, loans, and hard cash. And then Romania issued Jewish visas. The price tag for a visa for a Jew to leave Romania was $2,000 if this was an average Jew. If, however, you were a Jewish doctor, a scientist, or someone with an advanced degree, your price tag for a visa was $25,000. Now, how in the world, when you can't even earn a living, are you going to get $25,000 in your hand just for your visa? That doesn't count your spouses, your children, your parents, etc. It could easily cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes to be able to leave the socialist country of Romania. 94% of the Jews in post-war Romania fled the country. The Hungarian People's Republic lost 43% of its Jewish population. The Polish People's Republic, all of these are socialist countries, lost 80% of its Jewish population, nearly all of whom were Holocaust survivors. But not before the socialist government stole, seized almost all of the property of these Holocaust survivors. What about present day, current, quote, democratic socialist countries? That's a very popular term, democratic socialism, where voters actually elect their Marxist leaders. Let's look at Venezuela, where the socialist regime was established in 1999. The Venezuelans were not historically anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. Yet suddenly, when it became a socialist regime, their government was anti-Semitic. Hugo Chavez adopted anti-Semitic rhetoric and policies. He supported Iran, Syria, Hamas, such that Venezuela's Jewish population dropped from 22,000 to 6,000. And if you see the graffiti on the screen, Judíos go home. That's the message to the Jews of Venezuela. What about Cuba? If you talk to Cuban refugees in Florida, mainly in the Miami area, you will hear unanimous rejection of socialism. There were 24,000 Jews in Cuba's historic Jewish community, many being able to trace their roots back hundreds of years. But today, there are fewer than 1,500 Jews, a decline of 94%. Cubans were not anti-Semitic, but Fidel Castro was. And he has a dynasty. So there are other members of his family who are the dictators in Cuba. Between 67 and 70, Cuba sent military assistance to Egypt during the war of attrition against Israel. In 73, Cuba severed its diplomatic relations with Israel and later sent troops and equipment to Syria against Israel. The Cuban government, the Cuban socialist government, seized billions of dollars in Jewish land, property, and businesses. Jews who wanted to emigrate were refused visas until 1995. This is a very popular punitive measure taken by socialist countries against the Jews. If you want to emigrate from the socialist country, you as a Jew very often are prohibited and forced to suffer the persecution in that country. Bolivia's Jewish community was once 7,000 in number, and it has declined over 90%. Over 90% to less than 700. In 2009, the socialist government of Bolivia broke ties with Israel, calling it a terrorist and genocidal state. That's a very popular refrain, false accusation by socialists against Israel, labeling it a terrorist and genocidal state. And let me assure you that the state of Israel has never entertained any thought of committing genocide against any people. The history is very clear. Genocide is what happened to the Jews in Europe, Asia, and Africa during the Holocaust. That was genocide. It was the intent to wipe us off the face of the earth. And they wiped off the face of the earth 6 million Jews. Uruguay lost over 60% of its 50,000 Jews due to the socialist economic mismanagement. Socialism promises a lot, delivers not. Socialism promises a lot, delivers not. So this article, S, is there. A single example, one example, in any of the 64 experiments in socialism of Jewish communities growing and flourishing under a socialist regime The answer being an emphatic no. There's no evidence of Jewish communities growing and flourishing under the rule of socialists. The title of the book on the right of the screen, The Socialism of Fools. It has been over 100 years since the first social experiment in Russia. Yet since then, each of the 64 implementations of socialism has resulted in severe harm to the Jewish people. The evidence is indisputable, according to this very well-researched, documented article. For the Jewish people, a socialist or Marxist regime, at the very best, is a threat to our religious practice, our property, our jobs and professions, and the stability of our families and the local economy. That's at best. At worst, a socialist or Marxist takeover is a death warrant for some yet to be determined percentage of Jews trapped behind the barbed wire and the end of Jewish religious practice in that country. So even if they do not physically destroy our lives, take our lives, rob us of our lives, they do everything in their power to end Jewish religious practice in that socialist country. In its 100-year history, socialism and Marxism have caused the deaths of over 100 million human souls, including a large number of Jews. This is an undisputed figure. Over 100 million human souls, many of whom were Jews. The price of our people in terms of forced conversions and no choice assimilation is likewise enormous. This battle will unfortunately continue, yet 100 years after the beginning of the communist socialist revolution in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the historical record is not open to reasonable dispute. The final question, and the question I leave you with: when will our brethren, whose lives have been enriched by free markets, free discourse, and free societies, finally learn these painful lessons, these horrific lessons? What does it take? When our lives are so rich and enriched by free markets, free discourse, and free societies, to reject and never to repeat the painful, horrific lessons of socialism.